Don't worry about Dad's business, my brother Daniel whispered as we stood beside our father's casket, his hand heavy on my shoulder in what he probably thought was a comforting gesture. This isn't women's work, you just focus on grieving, and I'll handle the complicated stuff. Mom nodded approvingly from across the room, dabbing her eyes. Let Daniel handle it, sweetheart. Your father would have wanted that. But why was the company's lead attorney, Margaret Chen, now approaching me with a sealed envelope marked confidential, for immediate execution, and a look that suggested my brother's plans were about to collapse entirely? Miss Patterson, Margaret said quietly, steering me away from the crowd of mourners. We need to speak privately. It's about your father's final instructions. Daniel tried to follow. Whatever this is about, I should be involved. Actually, Mr. Patterson, this matter concerns your sister exclusively. Margaret's voice was polite but immovable. Per your father's explicit instructions. I followed her into the funeral home's private office, leaving Daniel sputtering behind us. My father, William Patterson, built Patterson Manufacturing from a single welding shop into a $340 million industrial empire over 42 years. He was old-fashioned in many ways, believed in firm handshakes, looked you in the eye when he talked, thought a person's word should be their bond. He'd grown up poor in rural Pennsylvania, worked his way through trade school, and never forgot what it meant to earn something rather than inherit it. He was also old-fashioned about gender roles, or so I'd always believed. Daniel was the heir apparent from birth. The firstborn son, groomed for leadership from the moment he could walk. He shadowed Dad at the factory, attended board meetings as a teenager, got a corner office before he'd finished his MBA. I was the afterthought. The daughter who was expected to marry well, raise children, support my future husband's career the way Mom had supported Dad's. When I announced I was going to business school, Dad had raised his eyebrows but said nothing. When I graduated top of my class, he'd nodded once, his highest form of praise, and changed the subject. I didn't join Patterson Manufacturing. The message had been clear enough, there was no place for me there. Instead, I built my career elsewhere, consulting first, then private equity, then a stint as COO of a mid-sized tech company. I learned everything about running businesses, just not my family's business. Daniel, meanwhile, had been installed as vice president of operations 5 years ago. Dad remained CEO, but everyone assumed the transition was inevitable. Daniel would inherit the company. That was the plan. What nobody knew, what I certainly didn't know, was that Dad had been watching both of us. Comparing. Evaluating. And making different plans entirely. Margaret closed the office door and handed me the envelope. Your father updated his will 6 months ago, she explained. He asked me to keep it confidential until after his death, and to deliver it to you personally, away from other family members. Why the secrecy? I think you'll understand when you read it. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter in my father's handwriting, shaky in his final months, but unmistakably his, along with a thick stack of legal documents. My dearest Caroline, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I owe you an apology that's about 40 years overdue. I kept reading, my vision blurring with tears. I raised you to believe that Patterson Manufacturing wasn't your place. I let your mother convince me that Daniel should be the heir, that tradition mattered more than talent. I was wrong. I've been wrong your whole life, and I'm sorry I was too proud to admit it while I could still look you in the eye. The letter continued for 3 pages. Dad explained that he'd been watching Daniel's performance for years, growing increasingly concerned. The bad decisions. The shortcuts. The way he treated employees like obstacles rather than assets. The mounting complaints from the board that Dad had quietly suppressed. Daniel will destroy what I built, Dad wrote. I've known it for years. But I couldn't admit it because admitting it meant admitting I'd chosen wrong. That I'd invested everything in the wrong child. Then came the part that made me gasp aloud. I've been following your career, Caroline. Every promotion, every success, every company you've helped turn around. You have everything Patterson Manufacturing needs, the vision, the discipline, the respect for people who work with their hands. You're the leader I should have been grooming all along. The legal documents confirmed what the letter promised. Dad had transferred 51% of Patterson Manufacturing's shares to me, effective upon his death. The remaining 49% was split between Mom, 30%, Daniel, 15%, and various long-term employees, 4%. As majority shareholder, I had the authority to appoint the CEO and make executive decisions. I also had the authority to fire my brother. There's more, Margaret said. Your father left specific instructions about Daniel's position. He documented years of performance concerns, poor judgment, harassment complaints from female employees, a pattern of taking credit for others' work. He wanted you to have the evidence you'd need if Daniel challenges your authority. She handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Emails, performance reviews, incident reports. Your father spent his last months making sure you'd have what you needed to clean house. I stared at the documents, at the letter, at the flash drive that contained my brother's professional obituary. Why didn't he tell me? Why wait until he was gone? Margaret's expression softened. He said he was ashamed. He'd spent so long treating you like you didn't matter, he didn't know how to suddenly treat you like you did. He thought this was the only way to make it right. I returned to the wake with the envelope tucked inside my jacket. Daniel intercepted me immediately. What was that about? What did Margaret want? Legal matters. Nothing that concerns you right now. Everything about this company concerns me. I'm going to be running it, Daniel. I met his eyes, really looked at him for the first time in years. Now is not the time. We just buried our father. Can we please get through the rest of this day before talking about business? He backed off, but I could see the suspicion in his eyes. He knew something had shifted. He just didn't know what yet. The wake continued for another 3 hours. I shook hands, accepted condolences, listened to stories about my father from people who'd worked with him for decades. Many of them approached me specifically, not Daniel, something I hadn't expected. Your dad talked about you all the time, one old foreman told me. Proud as hell of everything you accomplished. Said you were the one who got his brains. He said that? Every chance he got. Especially these last few years. Said he wished he'd. The foreman stopped, glanced at Daniel across the room. Well, he had regrets. But he loved you. Don't ever doubt that. I didn't know what to say. For 40 years, I'd believed my father saw me as less than my brother. Now I was learning that he'd spent his final years recognizing his mistake, planning to correct it, and never once letting me know. I wasn't sure if that made it better or worse. The board meeting was scheduled for 1 week after the funeral. Daniel had called it himself, eager to formalize his ascension to CEO. He'd spent the intervening days calling board members, making promises, positioning himself as the natural successor. He hadn't consulted me once. This is just a formality, he told Mom over dinner the night before. The board knows I'm ready. Dad trained me for this my whole life. Mom patted his hand. Your father would be so proud. I said nothing. I'd spent the week reviewing the flash drive's contents, meeting privately with Margaret, and preparing for what came next. I'd also reached out to several board members, the ones Dad had trusted most, and found them surprisingly receptive. We've had concerns about Daniel for years, one of them admitted. But William always protected him. We assumed his hands were tied by family obligations. They're not tied anymore, I said. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived an hour early and took my seat at the head of the table, the seat that had been my father's best for 4 decades. When Daniel walked in and saw me there, his face contorted with confusion. Caroline? What are you doing? Taking my seat. As majority shareholder. Majority, what are you talking about? The other board members filtered in, taking their places around the table. Margaret sat to my right, a stack of documents in front of her. Daniel remained standing, frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. Please sit down, Daniel. We have a lot to discuss. This is insane. You can't just, Dad would never. Dad left me 51% of the company. It's in his will, properly executed and filed with all relevant authorities. I gestured to the documents Margaret was distributing. You'll find copies of the share transfer, the updated corporate charter, and my appointment as CEO, effective immediately. Daniel's face went from confused to furious. This is fraud. You manipulated him. He was sick, he wasn't thinking clearly. Your father's mental competency was certified by 3 independent physicians, Margaret interjected. He also recorded video testimony explaining his decisions, anticipating exactly this kind of challenge. Would you like to see it? She pulled out a tablet and pressed play. My father's face appeared on screen, gaunt from illness but sharp-eyed and determined. I, William James Patterson, being of sound mind and body, hereby confirm that I am transferring majority ownership of Patterson Manufacturing to my daughter, Caroline Marie Patterson. This is not a mistake, not the result of manipulation, and not a decision I've made lightly. He paused, seeming to look directly at Daniel through the screen. Daniel, if you're watching this, I want you to understand something. I love you. I've always loved you. But love doesn't mean blindness. I've watched you for years, and I've seen who you really are when you think no one's looking. The way you treat people beneath you. The shortcuts you take. The credit you steal. You're not the man I hoped you'd become, and I can't let you destroy what I spent my life building. He turned back to the camera. Caroline, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough. You were always better than enough. I was just too stubborn to see it. Please take care of my company. Take care of my people. And know that wherever I am, I'm proud of you. The video ended. The room was silent. Daniel's face had gone from red to white. His hands were shaking. This doesn't mean anything. I'll contest it. You'll lose, Margaret said flatly. And you'll bankrupt yourself paying legal fees in the process. Your father spent 6 months making this bulletproof. Every document is in order. Every potential challenge has been anticipated. I stood up and addressed the board. My first act as CEO is to implement the leadership restructuring my father outlined in his final instructions. Daniel Patterson is hereby removed from his position as Vice President of Operations, effective immediately. You can't fire me. This is my company. It's my company, Daniel. It's been my company since the moment Dad took his last breath. I kept my voice level, professional, refusing to let his tantrum shake me. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. You'll receive a severance package consistent with your employment contract. Any attempt to interfere with company operations will result in legal action. 2 security guards appeared at the conference room door. Margaret had arranged that too. Daniel looked around the table, searching for allies, for anyone who would stand with him. But the board members wouldn't meet his eyes. They'd known about his failures for years. They'd just been waiting for someone with the authority to act. This isn't over, Daniel spat as the guards approached. You'll regret this. All of you. Goodbye, Daniel. He was escorted out, still shouting threats, still unable to accept that his birthright had been given to someone he'd dismissed as irrelevant his entire life. The restructuring took 6 months. I promoted several long-overlooked employees, people my father had identified in his notes as talented but sidelined by Daniel's ego. I addressed the harassment complaints that had been buried for years, implementing new policies and creating accountability structures that should have existed decades ago. I modernized operations while honoring the company's blue-collar roots. The results spoke for themselves. Employee satisfaction scores rose 40%. Productivity increased. Revenue grew for the first time in 3 years. The board members who'd been skeptical about a woman running a manufacturing company, and there had been a few, quietly revised their opinions. Mom never forgave me. You humiliated your brother, she said during our one attempt at a post-restructuring conversation. You destroyed this family. Daniel humiliated himself, Mom. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences. Your father would be ashamed. Dad is the one who gave me the company. He's the one who documented Daniel's failures. He's the one who recorded a video explaining exactly why he was passing over his son. I kept my voice calm. If you want to be angry at someone, be angry at him. But I think deep down, you know he made the right choice. She didn't speak to me for a year after that. When she finally reached out, it was through a lawyer. She wanted to sell her 30% stake. I bought it at fair market value, no negotiation, no hard feelings. Some relationships can't be salvaged. I've made peace with that. Daniel landed on his feet, more or less. He got a job at a smaller manufacturing firm in Ohio, trading on the Patterson name and his years of experience. From what I hear, he's an adequate middle manager there, competent enough when he's not in charge, when someone else is making the decisions he used to botch. He's never apologized. Never acknowledged that Dad might have had valid reasons for his choice. In his mind, I'm still the villain who stole his birthright, the conniving sister who manipulated their dying father. That's fine. I don't need his understanding. I just needed his seat. The company celebrated its 45th anniversary last spring. I gave a speech on the factory floor, surrounded by the workers who'd been with us for decades and the new hires who represented our future. My father built this company with his hands, I said. He believed that hard work and integrity mattered more than pedigree or privilege. He wasn't always right about everything. A small laugh rippled through the crowd, but he was right about that. I paused, looking at the faces around me. Men and women who'd trusted my father, who were now trusting me. Someone once told me that running a company isn't women's work. I'm here to tell you that running a company isn't men's work or women's work. It's just work. And the only thing that matters is whether you do it well. After the speech, the old foreman who'd spoken to me at the wake pulled me aside. Your dad would have loved that, he said. He always said you had a way with words. Did he? Every chance he got. Especially near the end. The foreman smiled, his weathered face creasing with genuine warmth. He knew he'd made mistakes, your father. But he tried to make them right. That counts for something. I thought about the letter, still tucked in my desk drawer. The apology that came too late, from a man too proud to deliver it in person. Yeah, I said finally. I guess it does. I keep Dad's letter in my office now, framed on the wall opposite his portrait. Some days I'm still angry at him, for the years of dismissal, the opportunities denied, the constant message that I was less than my brother simply because of gender. Those wounds don't heal completely just because someone acknowledges them at the end. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that he saw the truth eventually. Grateful that he trusted me with his legacy. Grateful that in his final months, he chose merit over tradition, competence over nepotism, the child who'd earned it over the child who'd merely expected it. Patterson Manufacturing is thriving. We've expanded into new markets, invested in sustainable practices, become a model for how industrial companies can evolve without abandoning their roots. The company my father built is stronger than ever. And every morning, when I walk through those factory doors, I remember what he wrote in that letter: "You're the leader I should have been grooming all along." Better late, Dad. Better late than never. They said women can't run companies, so I ran my families into the ground. No, wait, that was my brother's plan. I ran it into the Fortune 500. Dad spent 40 years teaching Daniel to lead and 40 years underestimating me. In the end, he realized his mistake. The only question was whether he'd have the courage to fix it. He did. The hard way, the too late way, but he did. And now his company has the leader it deserves. Not the son he trained, but the daughter he finally saw.